Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, 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 and welcome to the 50th Home Games. It is our half century. We cannot believe what it is our eyes they are seeing with the 50 Home Games. Who'd ever have thought it, etc., etc., etc. So we had to think how to celebrate. We thought about sending everybody a gift of some kind, but obviously you wouldn't want that because it would be a bit too old school and you're all very new model and all that kind of stuff. We thought about cake, but couldn't be arsed. If I'm honest. But what we could do is get Rich Denning from Ascentric on the Home Games, ladies and gentlemen. Please say good afternoon to Rich. And Rich, how are you doing?
Very well, Mark. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.
And tuning in, they are in their hundreds. We've got lots and lots and lots of people today. So lots of people very keen to hear from you, Rich. So I hope you've prepared a song for everyone. We were suggesting some songs that might be relevant and some artists that might be relevant for certain people in companies in the platform sector, guys like Harvey, people like that. We were just having a little think about who might be appropriate. But these are all jokes that we don't need to make, Rich. It's low end.
Definitely not.
End.
Get myself into more trouble, Mark.
Well, yeah, it's me
career
that gets into trouble.
A career dogged with controversy.
Tell me about it. But it's like, I'll be the one that gets into trouble for it. It's like the Billy Connolly thing about, the swearing. And if you come out wanting to swear when you've watched him, you say, don't worry, it goes away. I'm the one that's going to hell. You were only watching. So if you don't like it, it's my fault. And Mr. McMahon is live. We wondered if you would be, Paul. It said harder to get into this today than break into Fort Knox. Hope Richard is worth it. Well, I think we're all about the high-class content here, so that's absolutely locked on. As ever, if any of you are new to Home Games, usual little preamble while people join. We're going to run for just under 45 minutes. We're a couple of minutes in now, so we'll be out by 1:15. You ask questions in the chat. The chat is completely open now. We do leave chat open, but there are some things you might want to ask that Rich might not be able to answer because there might be some restrictions that Rich remains under. Is that a fair thing to say, Rich?
That is fair. I can talk in general. I can't even say it, but not specifics.
That sounds fine. So I'll kind of curate what's going on down the right-hand side. So you'll see me looking away, and that's for that. If any of you want to be extra double, triple sure that we see the question that you ask, if you go to the Ask a Question button at the bottom of your screen, that will flip it up onto my screen, and I'll make sure to get to you. And let's have a bit of fun. We're not trying to change the world, but there's lots of interesting things to talk about. And I have a feeling, knowing Rich a little bit, and we've known you for a little while, Rich, that we're going to have no trouble filling our time today. Last bit of housekeeping. I know you're all regulars, will be sick fed up of this, but tough. If any of you find that your feed is stuttering or any of that kind of stuff, it might be Rich trying to pronounce generalities. But if it's not, it's probably just buffering and stuff, and that little link I've popped there will sort you out. So let's dive in. Rich, first thing to say is congratulations on the new gig. If you'd like to tell the boys and girls what it is you're up to at Ascentric, and I give everybody that comes on a free hit to get your main corporate messages out nice and early. So why don't you clue us in?
Yeah, so thanks, Mark. I'll talk a little bit about M&G to begin with before I talk about the platform. So I sit in a newly created part of M&G called M&G Wealth. So within the business that is M&G Wealth, there's the small direct book that was the old M&G Investment Manager direct book, and the advice partnership. So what people might have known as PFP, and the platform. So that's new. We've formed strategy, set of missions, and we're all cracking on now into execution. So we started this particular journey in September last year when the platform deal completed, and I started working for David Montgomery, who I've known from the past from my past from Aegon, and that kind of an M&G level. That's what we're doing. So the platform sits under Wealth. In terms of Ascentric itself and why M&G buy it, it's no more complicated than if you've got a very big asset manager and a very successful asset manager and a very big and successful insurance company. you probably need to control distribution and try to control some flows into assets through a platform. Otherwise, you're at the mercy of 30 odd, 40 odd other platforms in the market to get that distribution. So it's not overly complicated strategically, but what we want to do in wealth is slightly different. We want to try to help, and we talked about this on a roundtable earlier in the week with New Model Advisor. We want to try and help bridge the advice gap. We're not looking to compete with the big advisor firms and firms that look at high net worth clients, but we are looking at what solutions and what technology we can deploy within Chris Haynes's advice business to see if we can bridge that advice gap. So the smaller, what you typically the market would say is a smaller value customer, and that really is one of the mainstays of what we're doing. ESG, and this is a corporate mission, but we inherit the corporate mission, and it's a passion really, and it flows through to everything, whether that's travel in between offices when we're allowed or anything else. We're sitting this quarter, we set 32% of money coming into the platform is in ESG funds, 5% overall, but 32% in the quarter, and rising. So it's not a lot of greenwashing going on. I speak to a lot of advisors, and a lot of advisors are getting demand from their clients that they want to invest more sustainably. So we want, we look after as a group 367 billion of people's money, and we want by 2050 for all of that to be in sustainable assets, and we've got a roadmap to that. So that's a big focus of what we're doing in terms of the platform itself. And I'll stop waffling, Mark, and allow people to ask questions. It's no secret that the platform had quite a difficult technology replatforming. And I know I've opened up a can of worms, and there'll probably be lots of questions on replatforming, which is fine.
I think it was open anyway. I think it was probably already open.
And you'll see, we still we're losing business as a result of that. Still, there's a lot of advisors got upset over a long period of time. We've cleared all of the issues that we had, so the platform works and the service is better than it was. It's not where I want it to be, where we want it to be, but it's better than it was. But we are starting to see some green shoots. So we're starting to see, I'm starting to have different conversations with advisor firms now about the things we're doing. And our focus really over the next 12 to, there's headlines on pre-fund, and it's bound to be, it's a flagship product, but the majority, 95% of our effort is being spent on 230 items across every aspect of the platform that make it better for people to use, straight through processing, more efficiency, all of the niggles and nagging problems that hung over from replatforming. That's really what I spend 80% of my week doing, is steering that transformation agenda to make the platform better than it is right now.
So given that we've kind of gone there, we'll surface some of the more painful stuff, I think, and then I want to talk about the issues more than the specifics around Ascentric, because also how long have you been in post now?
Since January.
Okay, so still, I'm sure you've got your feet under the desk and you know where the toilets are and stuff. Although, do you? I mean, you don't really get to go to the office.
No, I've been into the office once, so I do know where they are because I used them this week, but I didn't previously.
Actually, I know where the toilets are in Ascentric as well. It's a pain. You need your card to get out. You have to borrow one. Yep. There we are. But Matthew puts it fairly bluntly, right? So we'll accept your bluntness, Matthew. But it said promised so much, disappointed so many. So I think back in the day, I mean, you all part of the sector for a long time. You would have, of course, known Hugo very well, and everything kind of grew up with Ascentric. Yeah. And there was a great warmth, I think, for Ascentric. It was one of those businesses that people really loved dealing with, and then life moves on and things needed to change, absolutely, and a very, very protracted and difficult replatforming onto Bravura. Looking at it as an incoming chief, what do you kind of divine? What's kind of inside that? Why is it so hard to make this happen?
Well, I think I'll answer the question. I won't be a politician, but I'll go back to come forward, Mark. I think there's a slight misconception that people like me sit in rooms and go, wouldn't it be a great idea to re-platform? It's just not the case. You look at every possible opportunity. Can you do an upgrade without anyone noticing? Are there modules in the market? Could you go to some of the newer providers and integrate? Could you do more with Iris, IntelliFlow, and the back office providers? To you literally do look at every single thing that you can to avoid doing one of those big, expensive, complex replatformings. And most of the reason, and I've been in platforms since 2000, so the original Celestia platform, which is now Quilter. They've grown up over 21 years. They weren't designed. I looked at Bill's video the other day. Bill is a legend in platform because a lot of what Bill brought to platform was very innovative back in the day. So, I remember going up to see Andy Bell's business in 2001 and looking at doing a SIP inside a general investment account on a platform. It had never been done before. My boss at the time said I was wasting 250 quid on a train ticket. The bloke I went up with on a Monday said, I hate Manchester. And you look at those arrangements now, they're commonplace. So that's part of the issue, is that platforms have grown up over 21 years based on changing demographics, changing needs in the market, changing regulations, and what different advisor firms have asked a particular platform for. So you then look at two platforms I know well. So you look at the GBST Composer platform and you look at Sonata. And if I was looking at moving, which I'm not, so I don't want any headline, to re-platform to GBST, I can tell you that we couldn't offer what we offer right now on GBST because it just fundamentally doesn't do the same. But you do fall into needing to do that. So so specifically with this platform, what happened, I think, based on reading the lessons learned, etc., is an attempt to build a greenfield, new, modern, based off of a very vanilla Sonata implementation. Then followed by a come test that with the market. Whoops, that's not going to work. Then let's try and retrofit some stuff back, and you end up with this hybrid that doesn't. So you end up with lots of things being done manually. You disappoint an awful lot of advisors, as Matthew said on the chat. You disappoint an awful lot of advisors because you're caught in no man's land. You're not offering loads of new proposition, and you're not replicating the past. So that's really where we are. If you look at our decumulation solution, one of the things we are doing propositionally is to improve the decumulation solution because it isn't as good as you've written about it, and the Altus guys have written about it, and we need to improve the proposition on that. So really, you don't want to do a re-platform. When you do them, they're painful, they're difficult, they're expensive, they're longer than you think, and you do disrupt the advisor community a lot more than you want to. And I think there are some. I was on the round table with Jackie Boyle, and I think the way Fidelity have done it hasn't been without disruption to their advisor community, but they've taken their time. They've spent a lot of money and taken their time to do it to minimize the disruption. And I don't think that's what happened here. And it wasn't what, and I can't be too specific about my past. Yeah. It wasn't what happened in my past either. So, there are some lessons, I think, in re-platform that you need to take time and money, do it longer, and really you try to bring as much of the past forward as you can. And if you can't, be really clear why you can't.
Yeah, I mean, this is, thanks, Matthew. I'll come back to your next point in a moment. But Ascentric to me was certainly one of the platforms. I guess this is part of when it grew up and the way the tech works with Blue Button as well, was that it tried to do things that really, really fit the advisor firms that it worked with. So the advisor firm said, look, we really want to work this way. That's going to help us corporately or whatever it was. Then the platform Fair Play would do its absolute level best to try and facilitate that. And others, I mean, it's not unique in that, but it was, I think, one of the more flexible ones. And is this like a generational thing, so that as we move maybe from some of these 20-year-old kind of propositions into the more commoditized is a bad word, but you know what I mean, the shared tenancy and that kind of stuff through GBST or FNZ or Bravura or whoever. Do we lose some of that flexibility? Is that the price for having scalability and solidity as we look at the next 20 years?
Yeah, depending on the architecture, and depending if you're going to go for a big monolithic architecture. So FNZ's a BPO, right? So you buy the BPO, and you do what you want with it, with the customer experience from the call center onwards. And there's loads of examples of that. Vanguard, Standard Life, whoever they are. I mean, the GBSD and Sonata, they're big industrial platforms. You know, they've got hundreds of billions of assets, hundreds of thousands of customers, if not millions of customers on them. And therefore, to an extent, they are commoditized. So you can only differentiate to the extent you can go and get something from somebody. So Bravura last year bought a business called Finocomp. Finocomp do some really interesting technology. Yeah. So their model portfolio manager is brilliant, right? And you can innovate with it. You can, because in the end, it just gives the Sonata system a set of instructions to buy and sell units. So I think as technology develops and becomes more modular, and you've got solutions, microservice API-based solutions, you probably can start to flex again. But fundamentally, Mark, underneath it, that product engine will be harmonized because it has to, because you have to be able to afford it. You know, Bill on his session with you talked about collapsing margins. You know, he's right. When he and I started at Celestia, we were charging 1.5%. You know, what 15, 20 basis points now?
Yeah.
You know, so you know, you're dealing with collapsing margins, so your back end costs have got to be lower, and the only you can't therefore have a really highly customized system.
And I guess the challenge back to that, and this isn't your problem because you work where you work, but some of the younger is a bad word, but guys like Ola from Fundment that was on the other week, saying, well, actually, even the kind of big shared tenancy stuff is too expensive and old. We can start again. We can build it much smarter and leaner now, coding the way we code now, than these guys could when they built their systems. Do you think that's a threat to those existing models?
I think so, but I mean, so Ray Tubman, who runs Finocomp, when he's over, in fact, sometimes when he's not over, we kick this stuff around just because I was going to swear then for something and giggles. We just kick this stuff around, and neither of us can quite work out why you'd go and build another product engine and another registry and do all of that trading, because it's pretty commoditized, right? An ISA is an ISA. There's nothing to be really gained. And then so even if you wanted to do that, Mark, I come back to the premise of, if someone came to see me now and said, I've got this wonderful new architecture, this brilliant new platform, would you be interested in re-platforming? I'd thank them for their time and wish them on their way. I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's I mean, you're obviously looking fresh-faced and young as it is, but you wouldn't want to lose that.
I look like my dad. I look like my dad on.
Absolutely. Steve's asked a really good question here, Rich, and I want to put it to you. Is it correct that a platform should develop to help advisors when it's the clients that pay? So it's the classic, you know, she who pays should benefit, and isn't necessarily the case. Is the next stage of being grown up to put clients' needs and requirements ahead of advisors?
I don't know. It's something that's been kicked around since I've been doing this. The honest answer is I don't know how you would practically go about doing that. And you know, again, in my shared class with Bill, we've spoken to a couple of firms and got quite a long way down the track in terms of, could that be the case? Could we do something different? And you just, in the current regulatory regime, particularly, you get into disclosure and all sorts of other areas which are not easy to overcome. And who's the regulated entity and stuff. So I don't know that I mean, if advisors give good advice and good service to the customers, then customers benefit, right? So customers are paying for something that ultimately they do benefit from, and 99.99% of advisors do that. I think it's a difficult one. It's not something I've given a tremendous amount of thought to, but we've worked on it a bit in the past, picked it up, put it down, picked it up, put it down. So it's something probably that will come back on the table, I suspect, in the future, but it isn't something that's I'm aware of being actively debated.
I mean, I know that outside of kind of really kind of big existential stuff about who the client is and whatever, one of the things that we've looked at quite closely is the quality and the standard of reporting that clients can see, and whether, you know, there are lessons to learn from the robo guys and all that, many of whom are obviously away now, and many of whom have, the rest have kind of changed model a little bit. I think that first wave of robos is gone, but what survives them is really nice apps and some nice user interfaces and some things that do engage people who are already interested and want to see you so
Agreed.
do the other stuff.
Yeah.
Do you see demand coming in from the firms that you speak to for kind of spending energy on that, or are we still, not just for Ascentric but as a sector, are we still working on getting the basics right?
I think it's more getting the basics right. I mean, I think there is increasing demand. I think people are more digitally engaged. I mean, I look at my 18-year-old son. He's got an eToro account and he's trading crypto. And he didn't need any training because he learned how to do it on Grand Theft Auto. They'll demand that, right? They'll
also
demand
how
that.
to shoot drug dealers and take their stash.
Yeah, I'm 50 and I get bonus statements and stuff and I got 2 final salary pension schemes. I don't even open the envelope. So, we generally as platforms, when we write to clients, confuse them because we're writing with, MiFID 10% drop or costs and charges or consolidated tax vouchers, and it drives demand into the advisor. So I do think we need to do better. I think we need the equivalent of something like open banking to do that better so that people can get all of their information in one place. But right now, certainly in the advice space, it's complicated. People don't understand it and they rely on their advisor. So we disclose what we need to, and we provide tools to the advisors to help them do that.
Cool. Okay. Interesting question from Johnny Rayner here. Thanks, Johnny. Says, from your experience of migrations in the past, so Celestia to Scandia, and then co-funds to Aegon, and then seeing the tail end, I guess, of the Ascentric move as well. What single thing would you have done differently with each project? Now, you might want to generalize a little bit out of that because I know you're constrained in some of the things you can talk about. But what could be done differently, I guess, in the sector to make these things move more smoothly?
So there's different learnings depending on where you've been. So, if I look, and I can talk in specifics at one thing on Aegon, I spent the vast majority of time concerning myself with customers' data being right. So, we had a really sophisticated extract, transform, load and reconcile process so that we knew that every unit, and we didn't focus enough on the proposition elements of it. And I'm not giving away anything that's confidential. That's in the market. It was in every, it's in every paper, and others have spoken about it. So that on there would have been to spend more time focusing on proposition gaps that we were creating for co-funds users. We focused on the tech, and the tech move worked, but the proposition, therefore customer experience, ultimately didn't. I wasn't that involved in the Celestia Scandia one. Bill, Sean, Paul Buston and I had left to form Novia at the end of 2007. So I can't really comment on that. And with Ascentric, what would we have done different? No different, I don't think, than the Aegon co-funds. Is just really understand the proposition gaps that we were creating, and engage with those users on proposition gaps. And if you don't, what happens is you just get a tremendous bow wave of demand. You get loads of phone calls, you get loads of emails, loads of queries, loads of complaints, and you go into a vicious cycle for quite a while. It takes quite a lot of time and money to come out of that cycle. So
that's really good, and for everybody that's watching, I hope everyone appreciates just how much candor you're getting during this conversation, because you don't hear this kind of stuff in many places. So let's pretend, right, that someone you like is about to start going through one of these big processes, and I promise you we'll come away from this in a second, but and it's someone you like, right? Not someone you don't like. So other than telling them you must be out your gourds, try and avoid it if you can, they're in a position where they have to do it, and they want to avoid the sins of the past. They want to learn from all the exercises in the sector. Where do they start? How can, let's say, an advisor watching this that is facing a potential replatform, because there's no shortage of smashings together with PE, and we're going to come back to that and all that. How the firms that are talking to those advisors, how might they approach this in order to give those advisor firms more confidence that it won't be as painful as others have been?
Well, somehow you've got to try and document, platform's 20 years, or so take some of the businesses that are around there now that actually are 4 or 5 businesses under one brand, right? You've got to get under the skin of what they offer and what the proposition offers. So I was talking to an advisor firm about our place yesterday, and they were saying, you don't do phased drawdown. and we really miss it. Well, we know that out of 90 odd thousand clients, we only had 400 that used it, but those 400 were really important to that advisor.
Yeah.
So it's really getting under the skin of the data, Mark. That proposition feature, how important is it? What happens in the event that you're not offering it? And then really so you go spend a lot of time, be really clear with advisors what you're giving them, what you're not giving them, and then do what Paul Feeney's doing at Old Mutual. Do it on a phase basis and do some test and learn, do another phase and do another phase and do some test and learn, and develop the things that you've missed, because you will miss some things along the way. Just develop them out, or have that honest conversation with that advisor that that's not on your roadmap, you're not doing it. But big bang, I would avoid at all costs.
Cool. Andy, I think Andy's
I
coming
definitely can't answer that.
Quite a specific question. I think we might struggle with that one. I would encourage you to perhaps contact your local Aegon representative to get into that, or you might do off the record later. Anyway, let's come away from that. We'll come back into some more issues-based stuff in a little bit. So I'm really interested in the kind of really early days of the sector, because I came into platforms kind of 06, 07, that kind of time. So a lot of the exciting stuff had already been done, but you were there kind of right at the get-go.
Yeah.
With Bill. So tell us a little bit about how you came to be in harm's way around that time.
So I'd worked at, and it's really weird now, I'm moving over to M&G, but I worked at the Pru until the end of '99, and I rejoined the Pru, as I say, permanently this year, and I've got my same email address from when I left, and the muscle memory is still there. It's just the most surreal thing. I've half expected 7,000 emails or something to pop up on screen. So my boss at the time at the Prudential, and then Britannic, went to help found Celestia with Bill, Brett Williams, and some others, and we just had an idea. We looked at what Scandia had done, and we looked at what the South African businesses had done. Bill had looked at Australia as well, and essentially the platform then, and not so much nowadays, the platform then was made up of three groups of people. So you had technology people, you had insurance company people like me in operations, and you had fund management people like Brett Williams and Bill. And most platforms had a mix of those type of individuals, and you just bring that together. Built the IT and built a really successful business, and then Old Mutual bought Scandia and bashed the two things together, and some of us left. So they were fascinating days. I mean, they were just you were just making it up. Let's give you an anecdote, a brilliant Brett Williams anecdote. He got a complaint from an advisor that hadn't got his commission statement. And the advisor went mad, screaming down the phone. And Brett said, "That's absolutely fine. I realize that we post them online, so we're never, ever going to post out another commission statement again." So, years later, we claimed we were the first platform to ever put online commission statements and do it online only. But it came out of a screaming advisor saying he hadn't received it in the post. And the other thing that was back then, Mark, was funny, is that we thought 50 funds was a lot. We went live with 50 funds. And we thought, that's a lot for a fund supermarket. And I think, what have we got now? 4,500 or something. Yeah. I mean, it's just, good times, really good times.
And you were telling me an anecdote I enjoyed very much about Bill and getting going with Bill. I think.
Yeah, I met him at Heathrow Airport for an interview. He was flying out to South Africa, and it was classic Bill at a bar. "What do you want?" I had a pint with him. And we both really didn't know what we were doing, sitting talking to each other. He wasn't sure he was interviewing me. I wasn't sure I was being interviewed. It's the most random thing. Certainly the most random job interview I've ever had.
Yeah. What are you doing here? I don't know. Fantastic.
My second interview with Bill's probably better. We were in South Africa working, and he was looking at forming Novia. And we got off the plane and waiting for our hotel rooms, and we had a few beers by the pool, and it was the South African sun, and I fell asleep in the South African sun for 3 hours, and ended up with my face literally melting. It was horrific.
Oh my god, yeah, we're not built for that, especially
No.
not us pallid Scots for sure. So you're mentioning Novia there, and that's a good bridge, I think, to talking about consolidation and corporate activity in the sector. And one of the things that's really getting people interested is change of control and change of ownership, but with PE coming in as an influence now, where it hasn't. I mean, it has been there in minority shareholdings and guys like True Potential and guys folk like that, but less so in kind of more mainstream platforms. So what do you think about the kind of new blood coming into the sector in terms of money?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, they've access to a lot of money, private equity businesses, right? You know, they look at. I mean, I did some consulting before I did this for a PE firm, and it's interesting. They scan sectors that they specialize in, and they scan for availability, and then they've got a financial model, and they'll look at whether the targets that they're looking at meet the financial model or not. But actually, you know, they've been in and around wealth management with advisors and advisors consolidation for a long time, actually, and that doesn't show any signs of slowing down. Coming into platforms, I don't know. I think that the Anacap with Novia and Wealth Time, I can see synergies in that. I think it's you know, Wealth Time's a really good business, really well run business, really high customer satisfaction, high advisor loyalty. Novia is the same. So, you know, you can see that, and Anacap will invest in a way that probably existing shareholders of those types of platforms don't want to. You know, they've been in it for 12, 13 years. They want a return. And Anacap will come in and they will invest, but they'll invest in typical private equity way. It will be ruthless, it will be targeted, and it will be designed to ultimately return some percentage to their shareholder, 10, 15, whatever their return on equity is. It's a very different model. It's about buying something that's in position A, moving it into position B, and flipping it onto either another private equity or doing an IPO. So that's, you know, that's the difference, I think. You know, what you know, to be slightly controversial, what I don't understand, to come back to being replatforming, what I don't understand is any private equity business, and that's whether that's in advisor or in the platform space, that voluntarily does a replatform. I don't understand it. They must know something that the rest of us don't.
Yeah. I mean, there's well, we don't need to name names particularly because everybody gets it, but you know, remarkable that you would hold your hand up, particularly for a double replatforming with the James Hay stuff.
I'm sorry. I actually wasn't trying to be that specific. I just say if you're coming in, and I think other private equity businesses will come in. You know, so and if that's your approach, is to voluntarily do a replatforming of something that's fundamentally working, it's going to be tough. But
yeah, and you were talking about the kind of existing shareholders of those businesses, absent the kind of nasty but ultimately transitional problems of changing technologies. What about the ownership model? Because one of the things that I found myself chatting away to some firms about the other day was they were saying, well, we don't like PE. We wouldn't use anybody that was PE backed because we think they're too short term. They don't have the right kind of attitudes, and it doesn't fit with long-term goals for my clients, and I kind of understand that. But these same people would presumably have been fine with Royal London owning Ascentric, and then when Royal London decided that it was time to move it over to M&G, they moved it over to M&G. And so do you think the kind of ultimate owner of the business matters that much, on the basis that corporate activity happens all over the place?
No, I don't. But and I also think that kind of view on private equity, I can see why. You know, there's lots of case studies as to why. And I don't think that's what private equity businesses do. They actually generally, you can take FNZ as a prime example of private equity investment, or Intelliflo, right? No one has done anything really other than benefited from those businesses from being private equity owned over. You know, if you talk to Nick Eatock about his previous owners, he had nothing good to say about them, because they invested in the business. They invested substantially in the business. They moved the business from twice yearly releases to production releases every single day on that software, to being cloud hosted. And I'm not here to try and sell IntelliFlow to anyone, but so I think there's lots of really good case studies in our sector of really good private equity investment, because they know what they want to do. They're ruthless in the execution of it, and they generally need to improve the businesses from where they bought them in order to try and sell them for more money. So they have it's a different set of drivers potentially, but I don't think it's a bad thing.
Okay, that's really interesting. Let's jump back for a second. I'm going to go to one or two of the questions in the chat. And if you do have more questions for Rich, please get them in, because we've only got about 10 minutes left. And I want to talk a couple of other things with them as well. So, a specific one from Charles Southey. Hi, Charles. There's an open finance initiative. Is Ascentric going to be an active part of that? And you might use that, Rich, to jump us out into talking about being integrative and being open.
Yes is the answer. Have we been able to do anything like that? We're members of Tizer, but we've not been very active because you've had to be internal. You're firefighting, and but we've now turned a corner. We started turning the corner at the start of the year, as I said, with service. So we are going to be more externally focused. We've got I see a couple of guys from Altus. We're working closely with Altus at the moment on how we can do that, how we can improve transfers, how we can engage better with people with back office integration. We're looking at things like more modular kind of solutions as well, as I said, and we're looking at some of the software that Bravura have got. So we are looking at some of the architecture of the way the platform operates to make it play better with other providers and just really smooth out the process. It frustrates. I mean, I talk to Martin Jennings from time to time. We play golf. It frustrates Martin and I still how long it takes to move money around the industry. It just is frightening.
It is a little bit, and it's a kind of interesting worldview thing here. And I don't know how to ask this properly, so I'll just ask it, and you can tell me I've done it wrong. But clearly, M&G has some kind of vertical integration agenda, because you've got distribution, you've got proof on all the rest of it. Ascentric's heritage, obviously, is being very, very, very open architecture. With 32 different offshore bonds and 100 million different SIPs and all that kind of heritage behind it. And that having that integrative opening out kind of mindset, is that something that you can do in Ascentric without queering the pitch for that other stuff? Can you ride both horses at the same time?
Yeah, so if you look at one of the inherent capabilities of the Ascentric platform, the business I actually run is called IFDL. It's Investment Funds Direct Limited, and it's actually we provide the Ascentric brand as a public platform, as an open architecture platform, and we provide a platform for open work, and we provide a platform for succession, which is a sort of a hybrid white label under IFDL. So if we're going to move into which we are moving into that vertical integrated world, we just have another instance of the platform for that vertical integration, which will be for that market. It will probably be more basic. It'll be at a different price point because it is much more basic. You talk about those offshore bonds. We've got relationships with DFMs that we do whole of market ETIs. We do, we've got our own dealing desk. We've got our own CREST license. So are we gonna take a load of that stuff away? Well, that's the equivalent of re-platform. We never say never, right? There could be some stuff in there that's really daft, really complicated. It's not used anymore, and we'll engage with advisors if that's the case. But it's not the plan. The plan is to have what we internally would call the open architecture platform, Ascentric branded currently, although that will change. And then the stuff we want to do on M&G will be on a different instance, just in the same way that Succession's on a different instance.
That makes sense. Thank you. And Andy Hyam. Hey, Andy, how you doing?
Yes. And he used to work for me at Celestia a long time ago.
Andy, have you got any stories about Rich?
Plenty.
So asking about regulatory change. Now, platforms have waded through, and advisors, of course, but have waded through enormous amounts of regulatory shifts over the last little while. Anything kind of more coming up you see that's ringing your bell?
No, we've got a really good relationship with the FCA. We talk to the FCA. There's nothing. I think it's been tough actually, and I'm going to get crucified by advisors, but it's actually been tough for the FCA, the pandemic regulating, because they're working from home the same as anyone else. Our supervisor's cat frequently runs across her desk at home. And I think that's kind of, you've seen it in the press. It's held up change of control, and it's held up approvals and stuff. So I think actually, in fact, the FCA have got quite a chunk of stuff to get through that was already on the agenda. So but round the corner, they've published, what is it, this week? They published stuff on property funds. So the consultation process on property funds continues. That'll have a profound effect on the market. If those plans come in and then they're deemed as unsuitable going forward for retail investors, then but do I think otherwise? No, but you never know. You're one more budget away from the government doing something with pensions again, because they decide they can.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we've talked about that before here as well. Couple of blockchain questions. God, I don't even know what to do with these, but on the data money transfer, how soon will blockchain impact on platforms, do you think? And Kevin asking the same thing. Do you need to be doing it to try and speed up that velocity of money that you're talking about? Do you see blockchain as a way of getting that going?
So I think blockchain in business to business financial transactions doesn't feel that far away. It feels like the money, the physical cash we currently swill around with asset managers. They send us, we send them, and it's billions every day that flows between different platforms and different asset managers. That feels like that not that far away, but I think I said that 4 or 5 years ago. End customer stuff, much harder. I think the central banks don't like it. And when the likes of JP Morgan are arguing with the Fed about blockchain and whether they can use blockchain themselves for their customers, and distributed ledgers, are not getting anywhere. Until the central banks get their heads around you and me passing money through blockchain as or me as a platform and you as a customer, that they've got no. And how do you get into the CAS regime, and how do you get into ICAP and all the other stuff that goes with that? Do our ICAP of whatever it is, do we hold that in blockchain? It's complicated when it comes to but I think it would make a massive difference. It would speed up, but I don't think it's close.
I do like the idea of you holding your liquidity requirements and stuff in Dogecoin. I think that would be excellent.
Yeah, I'm not sure the Bank of England would agree with you.
To the moon. That'd be great. It'd be hilarious. You're very much the Elon Musk of platforms these days. And finish us off, we spent a bit of time earlier the other day talking about the advice market itself and some of the moves there. So we talked about consolidation and that kind of stuff in platforms, but you've been working in the advice sector for a very long time, and we talked a little bit about consolidation in that. So tell us your view of what's happening out there with firms.
And I think the consolidation is interesting. I mean, when I started work in the late 80s, mid 80s, there were 250,000 what you'd call independent financial advisors. I think we're down to about 30,000 now, and it is creating this advice gap. I've got a friend of mine that she's got about 100 grand. She can't find. Just don't come to me for advice. I say I don't do it, but I do technology and operations. But where does she go to get that? Doesn't understand pensions, doesn't understand as in her 50s. So I think the consolidation in the advice market will continue. Advisors want to retire. There's a lot of advisors that but we need more advisors. We're launching an academy to try and train more advisors. So we need more advisors. I don't know that consolidation does that. And I think that, like anything, the consolidators are going to have to do stuff in their own businesses, right? So if you buy 100 different companies, at some point you're facing to having to do some kind of integration with them. Probably, you probably have 20 different platforms. You probably have 3 or 4 different back office providers. So I think there's going to be a need for those consolidators at some point to do quite a lot of engineering in their own businesses to get them to be more of a single operating unit rather than 100 different firms.
Yeah. I mean, it's the biggest failure of regulation. I don't know if you mean blockchain or consolidation.
Blockchain, probably.
The thing that kind of strikes me about those businesses is that it sort of does end up, doesn't it? If being kind of like replatformings, except on a kind of firm by firm scale. And the other kind of tricky bit is advisors that aren't retiring tend to want to retain independence unless they go down an SJP type model or something like that. And the two things are very hard to square, because if you're used to using Ascentric and you still want to, but that's not part of the world, you get in there. Does it all eventually shake out, Rich, as something where we say, well, we just need many, many more open standards so money can shuttle around and it's so much easier to move? Do platforms ever get there, or is that kind of turkeys voting for Christmas?
No, I think they have to, Mark. I think it should be frictionless, right? You know, we when we started Novia back in the day, Bill, Sean, Paul, and I sat and said it should be as easy to put money on this thing as it should to take it off, and I still believe that, right? Platforms have always been really good at taking money in, less good at transferring it away. We need to just, it needs to be frictionless. There's a customer at the end of it, right? And the customer doesn't want to be out of the market. They don't want. There's that fear, right? It's their life savings, and there's that fear if they're out of the market for 10 days. Where's my money? I can't see it on my old account because it's gone. I can't see it on this new thing because it's not there. So we just as an industry, we need to do a much better job of moving the money around much faster and giving more transparency to it.
Brilliant. Listen, that's our time. It's 15:15. As ever, there's tons of stuff I would have liked to ask you, but we run out of time, so who knows, we might do it again at some point. One of the things that I wanted to mention to listeners, and kind of seeking feedback from you all, is HomeGames came about because we couldn't do physical events, but we are thinking of programming DeadX again this year in November. So if you know where any Lancats are and you want to let us know if you think that's a good idea, whether you'd be up for face-to-face stuff or would you prefer a live streamed event or something like that, it'd be great to hear from you. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Rich. That was an incredibly frank and candid thing. Highly enjoyable. Thanks everyone for joining, and we will see you next time. Lancat out.